My bad landlord wouldn't return my $2,500 deposit, then told me too bad. He never expected that my revenge would cost him everything. I signed the lease on apartment 3B because desperation leaves no room for choosy. The listing said, charming studio, $1,200, utilities included. Reality said 400 square feet of peeling brick, a ceiling fan with only 2 blades, and wiring older than my grandmother's record player. My name is Theo, 27 at the time, and I had exactly 2 options. I could wrestle for a couch in a 4-person share house on the edge of town, or accept this glorified storage unit that at least provided private walls. My bank balance was $3,000. Gary, the landlord, wanted $2,500 for a deposit. I paid in cash, every bill damp with the sweat of knowing I would have only $500 left for the month. Gary met me outside the building wearing mirrored aviator sunglasses, although the sky was cloudy. He managed the handshake that felt more like testing a grip strength than greeting a tenant. While I toured the space, he leaned in the doorway, rattling off no smoking rules, late fee policies, and the line he repeated to every new renter. This is an as-is unit. I keep the rent low by trusting tenants to manage minor issues. Minor issues would prove a flexible phrase. The building was a 5-story brick rectangle wedged between an auto glass shop and a payday loan storefront. In daylight, you could see the faint outline of old signage painted on its side, McLaren and Sons Storage. Someone in the past had tried to scrub the letters, then gave up halfway. The single street door led to an unlit hallway that smelled like bleach and stale French fries. An iron fire escape ran the back wall, visible through a grimy window, though it ended 1 floor short of the roof like a staircase to nowhere. I moved in on a rainy Saturday with help from Bree, my best friend from art school, who now owned a van unofficially named the Trash Hauler. Water dripped through the hallway ceiling onto the top step. We joked that it looked like the building was sweating. Neither of us laughed long. By nightfall, my mattress rested on unfinished boards, and my desk balanced on paint cans because the floor sloped 5 inches from kitchen to window. I texted Gary photos of the leak, the sagging ceiling, and the missing outlet cover behind the stove. He texted thumbs up and said he would drop by soon. Soon never came. 2 weeks later, the drip above my stove became a steady patter, blistering the paint and dousing the cheap range below. I pinged Gary again. He responded with a single sentence, "Have you tried turning down your shower pressure?" I lived alone. The leak's source was clearly the upstairs unit, but he would not climb a single flight to look. I bought a bucket, set it on the stove grate, and learned how to fry eggs on a borrowed hot plate. Months stacked. I stayed because rent anywhere else would gut my pay. Nights I lay awake listening to mice scuttle under the heating baseboard. One Wednesday in late spring, the G-line fuse popped, darkening my apartment and charging the air with burnt wire smell. The building's breaker panel hung behind the communal fridge in the lobby, an antique gray box labeled with faded masking tape. To reach it, I dragged the fridge forward, found the trip switch, and flipped it. Sparks snapped at my knuckle. Gary's solution the next day was to leave a new strip of masking tape reading, "Do not touch sparks," on the panel door. By then, I believe the entire structure subsisted on tenant avoidance, like a vampire on blood. Despite all of that, I paid on time. The lease listed daily penalties of $100 for late rent, and my entry-level customer service salary did not tolerate penalties. When payday hit, I used my phone on the bus ride home to send a direct deposit to Haskins Holdings. Rent kept the roof overhead, however cracked that roof might be. 17 months into my tenancy, lightning struck in the most literal sense. The building took a power hit during a thunderstorm, and the incandescent bulb in my bathroom exploded specks of glass across the sink. I texted Gary to report both the shattered bulb and the charred socket smell. His answer appeared 2 hours later. "Hardware store sells bulbs 2 for $5. Get LED, lasts longer." I realized if my wiring failed and killed me, he'd probably argue my corpse owed rent till the lease ended. That was the same week a recruiter emailed about a junior UX design position in San Diego. I had spent 4 years polishing a portfolio of side projects and open source designs, hoping for any ladder out of the call center pit. Their offer letter landed on a Friday afternoon. Base salary $87,000, relocation stipend $3,500 payable on arrival, Reimbursement of moving expenses after 60 days. I whooped so loud the upstairs leak showered plaster dust onto my hair. To move across the country, I needed my security deposit. $2,500 would finance the U-Haul, gas, a motel or two, and first month's share of an Airbnb until the stipend cleared. Without it, I would be forced to beg a loan from my mother, whose retirement savings were already ragged from medical bills. So 30 days ahead of July 1st, I drafted my notice to vacate. I printed 2 copies and climbed Gary's stucco porch. His house on the suburban edge looked freshly painted. A kayak leaned against the garage. A barefoot teen opened the door, shouted, "Dad, somebody for you." Gary arrived shirtless in swim trunks, a beer in hand, and signed my copy without reading. Inspection morning of the last day, standard procedure. Congratulations on the new job. I spent the next 3 weeks cleaning like a monk. The floor slope remained, the ceiling stain remained, but grease vanished from the cabinets. I patched nail holes with spackle and touched up paint where the wallpaper had bubbled. I mopped the warped hardwood until it reflected the single overhead bulb. I even replaced the cracked outlet cover behind the stove with a dollar store plate, all in pursuit of that deposit. July 1st dawned humid and windless. My belongings were already packed and loaded in the borrowed van. Gary was an hour late. He arrived with a flashlight and clipboard. He ignored my greeting and went directly to the kitchen. His beam found the ceiling stain. He stabbed at the soggy plaster with his pen. Flecks fell to the stovetop. Water damage, that is tenant negligence. Whole panel needs replacing. I reminded him the leak had dripped since move-in. He shook his head. No record of maintenance request. The lease requires written form. He checked the bathroom, saw the burn mark around the socket, and jotted, "Electrical hazard." The inspection lasted 7 minutes. In the hallway, he handed me a pink carbon copy. Deposit forfeit. Any costs above $2,500 will be invoiced. He stuck his earbuds in, turned, and trotted downstairs humming. I froze, clutching the slip. My first reaction was pleading. I chased him outside, explained that without those funds I might lose the job offer. He unlocked his truck without listening, slid into leather seats, and said, "Sorry, bud." Then he drove off. I stood on the curb as dust settled around my ankles like final punctuation. That night I spread an atlas across my mattress and ran numbers. Gas from the East Coast to San Diego would run $500 even if prices stayed low. Motel nights at budget chain rates $400. Cheap meals, bridge tolls, the inevitable surprise expense. My $500 reserve would not manage half. Credit card limit sat at $1,000, already dented by my laptop purchase. My heart hammered with the math of failure. I nearly called the recruiter to decline. I nearly cried. Anger arrived instead, steady and focused. Gary exploited every tenant with indifference and threat of court costs. Maybe, just maybe, the city would care. I knew only rumor. The building used to be a warehouse and conversions required certificates. I opened the county assessor database and typed the address. Use code line read, commercial, light industrial, storage. No mention of residential, no certificate of occupancy date. My pulse studded. I cross-checked building permit archives. Last permit dated 1989 for roof shingle repair. Nothing for plumbing or electrical upgrades. I zoomed into the city zoning map. The entire block was zoned industrial with no overlay for dwelling units. At 2 a.m, I stepped into the hallway with my phone flashlight and took photos. The rat's droppings behind the washer, the boiler pipe dripping through rust, the breaker panel with its charred switch and Gary's handwritten warning. I filmed a short clip of the sloping floor, placing a tennis ball that rolled from one wall to the other. I returned to my room and filled out the online complaint form labeled Unsafe Living Conditions. The portal asked whether tenants faced immediate hazard. I ticked yes and typed, "Building is operating as illegal apartments. No certificate of occupancy. Electrical and plumbing hazardous. Landlord refuses repairs." I attached every video and photo, hit submit, and exhaled. I half expected nothing to happen. Municipal offices move slow, but I also hoped maybe an inspector would drop by in August, just in time to spite Gary's greed. Satisfied, I loaded the final box into Bree's van. At dawn, we rolled onto I-80 heading west. 3 days later, we reached Denver. Between caffeine runs, I checked the tenant group chat. My screen glowed with 53 unread messages. The first photo showed a line of city vehicles outside our building. Another photo revealed yellow placards on each door reading, "Unsafe to occupy," under bold black letters. Alejandra had live blogged the event. Fire marshal discovered faulty sprinklers, no secondary egress, overloaded circuitry. Building inspectors cited illegal conversion and immediate condemnation. Tenants were granted 72 hours to vacate. The city offered emergency vouchers for motel stays. Gary's truck appeared in several videos, him pacing the sidewalk and shouting about overreach. One clip captured him arguing with an inspector who said fines would accrue at $7,000 per unit per day until compliance. Alejandra captioned it, "Do the math, Gary." The group chat exploded with relief and frustration. Relief that someone finally shut him down. Frustration about the scramble for new housing. I felt guilt for launching the bomb and leaving them in the blast. But texts soon reminded me 2 families had been trying to break leases for months due to mold endangering asthmatic kids. They thanked the unknown whistleblower. I typed a supportive message under a throwaway alias. 24 hours later, Gary posted a public rant on Facebook. "Attention friends, our property seized by corrupt bureaucrats due to false claims by disgruntled deadbeat." He begged for donations to cover legal fees. Comments were not kind. Former tenants listed grievances. Others asked about the missing deposits. His GoFundMe raised $12. By the time Bree and I crossed into Utah, the city's notice hit legal newspapers. 8 units at $7,000 per day, total $56,000. Repairs would require new wiring, sprinkler installation, second staircase, and full zoning review. Even if he started that day, best-case timeline looked like 8 weeks. 56,000 times 56 days came to $3,136,000. That did not include contractor costs or rehousing reimbursements. The deposit theft now felt comically small. I still needed the cash, but revenge had grown exponentially larger. In Las Vegas, we stopped at a desert rest area. I stood under sodium lights, phone in hand, calculating interest on a relocation loan. My credit card offered a cash advance at 10%. On $8,500 in expenses, interest would be less than $900 if I repaid once the company stipend arrived. I pictured Gary hammering drywall sheets while city clerks logged another day's fines. I signed the loan application right there, thumbprint and all. Bree celebrated by buying 2 gas station hot dogs. We reached San Diego on the 5th day. Ocean air tasted like possibility. The design company's furnished temporary housing looked palatial. A real kitchen, grounded outlets, a balcony that actually drained rainwater. My first night I slept without rodents scratching overhead. 2 weeks later, HR processed my stipend. I paid the cash advance principal, interest, and thanked every star above. Another email awaited from the city clerk's office, forwarded by Alejandra. Owners found in violation of Building Code Section 501.2, ordered to cease residential rental operations indefinitely. Tenants had filed a class action to recover deposits, and the city planned restitution hearings. Gary's empire was toast. Months flowed into new routines. I designed onboarding flows, hiked coastal trails, and forgot the smell of mildew. One afternoon, I opened the local news in my former town. A headline read, "Warehouse landlord declares bankruptcy amid safety suit." The article quoted Gary blaming an internet snitch. He claimed fines exceeded $2.5 million. Creditors had seized the F-150. I closed the tab, opened Adobe XD, and designed a prototype with brightness that felt like freedom. Did I ever recover my security deposit? The bankruptcy court mailed me a creditor packet. I filled it out, chuckled, and filed it away. Odds of payout are slim, they said. I don't need it now. The real compensation happened the day inspectors taped those placards. People ask if I regret potentially displacing my neighbors. I remind them the building itself was the threat. If a fire had started, no second exit, faulty breaker, no sprinklers. My complaint forced the city to see what greed hid behind primer paint. Sometimes eviction of negligence is the only way to give tenants a chance at safety, even if upheaval hurts in the short term. The recruiter who hired me loves my story of small guy beats slumlord. She calls it brand resilience. I call it survival by stubborn logic. Gary gambled that poor tenants fear authority. I gambled on municipal bureaucracy. He lost millions. I lost $900 in interest. I would pay it again. So if your landlord pockets your deposit and laughs, remember that building codes exist for a reason. Every city keeps a dusty archive of zoning maps waiting for someone to open. Knowledge turns desperation into leverage, and sometimes the loudest wrench a mechanic can wield is a quiet complaint filed at 2 in the morning.